From a closet, also known as the Jim McCarthy Voiceovers World Headquarters Studio, this is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. Yes, this is the JMVO Weekly Primer. It's more like a weekly-ish primer at this point because I'm producing so many other different podcasts these days that it's a cobbler's shoes scenario. And sometimes my podcast is the last one to get attention. But here we are. Thanks for jumping aboard. Thanks for listening. The Weekly Primer is all about making your life better through marinating your mind in good stuff. My name is Jim McCarthy, owner, operator, and chief bottle washer at Jim McCarthy Voiceovers, and I believe that as business owners and entrepreneurs, hey, salespeople, just people in general, we are bombarded by negativity every day. My gosh, isn't that true as of late? And it's the last thing that we need. If you want to see your life and business change for the better, consume nurturing, good stuff. Of course, as usual, the primer is brought to you by Big Dot Lighting and Electrical. We are a Middle Tennessee commercial and residential services company that specializes in converting your business to energy-efficient LED lighting. That is one of our specialties for sure. And of course, we do all sorts of other electrical build-outs. We just finished a car wash, of all things. So, getting on with it, I was intrigued and inspired to do another episode right today and this week because of what we're going through. The last time I did a podcast, it was a solo thing. I wanted to go over all the positive comments of things that happened in people's week, that particular week in the life of some of the listeners. I had posted a question and just read all the responses just to, kind of put good stuff out there, and the smallest positive can be a very good thing. In this day and age, when stuff like what we're going through happens, when you're a business owner, one of the biggest things to start looking for are budget cuts. And a lot of times, marketing is typically the first one to go. To those of us who live and breathe and work in marketing and advertising, of course, we want to tell every business owner, no, don't do that, because it's the akin to putting sugar in your gas tank. Why would you let off the gas pedal? And obviously, you got to be cognizant of that and consider all those things when economic adjustments happen. But of course, a crisis of this magnitude, nobody had ever seen coming. And I have a foremost expert in PR and marketing and communications I want to bring on board with me. Her name is Kim McKeeman. She owns McKeeman Communications and PR, and she is been doing this a very, very long time, has seen a lot of the economic ups and downs that we've had in the past, several decades and such. So without further ado, I'll bring Kim on. There you are. How are you?
Hey, Jim. I'm doing well. How about you?
I miss seeing your face at BNI every Wednesday morning.
But we can do it virtually, so there's that.
Talk about a pivot. Talk about adapting to the times. And man, they were on top of it, the BNI organization.
I was really, really amazed. And that was, again, it was very inspiring. And I got to say, I was a healthy skeptic too. Like, how are we going to get 70 plus people? And are they going to show up? And are they going to participate?
And they are.
It was phenomenal. But no, in the midst of all of this, face-to-face networking is not dead.
No.
It is alive and well.
And a lot of I had an article that I came across how, I think it was from the Wall Street Journal. I posted it on my Facebook page, and they talked about how business networking is now dead. And I put it right up there. I'm like, no, it's not. This is why we shouldn't listen to the flippin' media, okay? Holy crap. Shut up already.
Yeah. Sometimes we just have to turn the TV off and walk away.
It's getting to the point where we just got to take Facebook off the phone. Yeah, my gosh. But tell me a little bit, let's give it in a nutshell, how you got to where you are today. Tell me the story.
Yeah, so the story is we actually started out as a virtual PR agency before it was cool. Mm-hmm. And people didn't really know what we were doing at the time, but I had my first child and needed a little bit more flexibility. And lo and behold, I found out that there was a phenomenal talent pool of people just like me that wanted to have a little bit more balance, and were extremely hard workers. We grew from that over the last, we're celebrating our 25th, and we feel extremely fortunate. Grew from that to a partial virtual agency. Had lots of learnings along the way in the 25 years, a lot of bruises. It felt like some broken bones, but came out stronger for it. But yeah, right now what we're doing is primarily our client base is restaurants and retail. Mm-hmm. And we know where they're struggling right now. We've got clients, and that, just, it breaks our hearts. They're down 50%. They're trying to decide if they're going to survive. Folks are just, trying to keep the lights on. Mm-hmm. And that's really, it brings out, I guess, some of the roots in terms of how we started our business. It was actually a lot of crisis and issues management. So we're having to put those lenses back on and really dig in deep and help them. And I think I can relate and being vulnerable as well. We've been impacted. We've lost 24% of our expected revenue in, I think it was 5 days. Yeah. So we're having to do the same things they are, and so I think there's a relatability there that is helping both our team and our clients as well.
So you find that what was the first phone call you got that said, "Okay, let's start cutting back"? How long into it did it happen?
It was, it was actually on, I'm trying to think, it was probably about once, the president announced his, the shutting down of the European flights. It was probably about 6 days later. And then I think it was the next day, another shoe dropped. And then I think we got a couple of 3 days in between that before we got one more. And some of these, honestly, I will say that they're struggling. They just are. And right. So where do you go first? You go to marketing, but you also go to, a lot of folks are going to their outside counsel so they keep their teams intact. Right. So it's understandable. We get it. It's, it's certainly painful. We still got our team together, and we're, doing exactly everything we need to keep them together. But yeah, it's amazing. I had one of my clients, and they're looking to reengage. We have clients that are looking to reengage at a higher level, or more broadly. But they say, "Did you ever think we'd be here 4 weeks ago?" No, I mean, it just changed that rapidly.
Now, I've always talked about, I've had many guests on that we talked about the prospect of recession. And one of the podcasts I did with Grant Cardone, I asked him, I said, a lot of your type of people, influencer level people, Gary Vaynerchuk, they're talking about the inevitable next recession. And it's like we all know that somebody is going to be right in terms of prognosticating when that will happen. I said, what is important is during that time when it does happen, whether it's catalyzed by something that we didn't see coming. Obviously, the COVID thing was something we did not see coming. Much like the housing bubble in 2008, a lot of people didn't see that coming, but it wasn't a shock event. It was a warm-up event. It kind of ramped up and then took everybody by surprise. Bear Stearns collapsed and all the different things were happening with the banks. And we didn't have the structure in place with social media and the public grasping messaging at that particular point. It was still kind of getting up on its feet. Facebook was, kind of coming into its own around that time. I believe a lot of people were still on MySpace at the time. So just messaging out and going against the media narrative that was forming, which is the toughest thing that we all had to contend with up until probably 5 to 7 years ago when social media became a thing. Now we just don't know what is true. That's a whole other topic. But we can form other waves of counter narratives to what the media puts out there, the traditional media. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting time to see how fast we'll bounce back from this based on that alone,
Agreed. It's funny. I just got off the phone and I was saying, "Hey, I've got to go to this podcast." And I just got off the phone with a client who we were we were talking with several franchisees, and he was one that saw the short game and the long game. It's like, now is not, and that's what, we're telling folks, now is not the time to sell unless you have a gift that you can connect with somebody who really needs it. Mm-hmm. It's not the time to sell. It doesn't mean that your service isn't needed, but folks, you have to serve it up much differently. And this gentleman was, very much of the mindset that we don't need to sell. I mean, like we just need to show up for people. And I think that's what people are trying to figure out, how to show up.
Right.
And we've got, and to your point, and you know, Jim, because we talked about it before, I love the premise of this podcast, because all about optimism, certainly a realist at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good things happening out there.
Yeah.
And we have to continue to reground ourselves in that. And I think that's, our team as a whole, we have these core values. And one of those is, for the greater good. And just like BNI, it's all about, like, how can we pay it forward to somebody else? Mm-hmm. We don't have to worry about what we're getting in return. If it lifts one person, it's going to lift us all. So for the greater good, we're looking at ways to help. BNI is one of those great ways. We had another group of women who was really interesting. 20 of us did a Zoom call, and it was heart-wrenching when I heard somebody who was 1 year in business going to have to look for another job because she needed to keep the lights on. And I'm like, that's I feel, that's when I feel very blessed and say, like, how can I help you? And lo and behold, I at least gave her some kind of a couple pointers on where she might look and see who is actually hiring right now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's there are good stories out there, and people want to do the right thing, and a lot of people are doing the right thing.
I've heard a lot lately. I had a conversation the other day with somebody, and they said, this is probably the reset button we all needed, where we need to just kind of slow down, refocus, recalibrate, and figure out what's going on and reassess where we are. And I said, yeah, it's something that I've had the luxury of being able to do, because I've kind of not planned for this, but based on our experience, my wife and I, me being a single income earner over many, many years, my wife being a stay-at-home mom, we haven't had expendable cash. We haven't had disposable income to do whatever we want with and have a lifestyle that's extravagant. So we've always lived very tightly, and we've kept that attitude, although the last 3 to 4 years have been very much better for us. Mm-hmm. We've kind of stayed within those parameters. So thankfully we did, but I mean, it was also in the back of my mind that, okay, we got to put away a nest egg, at least some sort of a fund that I can access whenever an investment opportunity, or hey, 6 months of just float. If the world blows up, there are a lot of people that aren't in that boat. Everybody's lives have been turned upside down. Pretty much. You have a lot of people that, we have record unemployment at this point. And somebody even mentioned today that I said, well, the biggest challenge we're going to have when this thing comes back and we're not on lockdown anymore is getting people hired back and making an income. And he said, well, why would they come back when they're making a lot better on unemployment than working? And I'm like, that's an interesting concept. Some of them are making upwards of $20 an hour just sitting collecting unemployment right now.
Right. So. And you hear that a lot. And when it comes to something like of this magnitude, which nobody's seen in many years, it's just, there's so many things that folks, there's a couple different places. You got the initial crisis, and that's when people are starting to kind of swirl and spin, and you've got that kind of almost a stabilization, if you will. And I kind of feel that we're starting to enter that. It just depends. Again, everybody's mindset's a little bit different. Yeah. And then you've got the recovery. Yeah. And I think that's, and what's going to happen is how we all behave, towards one another, towards, we talk about social distancing. Now it's like physical distancing, and how we all behave right now is going to determine, for ourselves, but also our businesses, how we're going to recover and how quickly. And I think, again, it's that whole looking out for the rest of your colleagues, your fellow business people, looking out for your people. I know, that's an argument about the unemployment thing. And again, I guess it's a mindset for me. It's like, I tend to, I know there's always that risk, but I tend to believe people are better than that.
Right.
The majority of people. And I still do.
But I think we hear about, the bad seems to get a lot of exposure and attention. And I think you're right. I do believe what you're saying, but the attention that the contrary gets outweighs what is really happening. And that's that's counteracting the media narrative, the popular media that's out there. Every day we're hearing about this thing and they're digging for bad news. Because, it just, if we can scare people, our ratings go up and we sell better. That's the funny thing is that nobody's advertising and they shoot themselves in the foot.
Exactly. Well, it's funny. And I would agree. And we've got a team member. I was trained as a newspaper journalist. We've got a team member who recently joined us, Katie Parker, who
I talked with her today.
TV. Yeah, and she worked in TV news, and she was, the evening producer. And she basically, like she said, like, no, it's got to be. We're always digging out the bad, and it was kind of disheartening, and that's why she left. And we're glad that she did join us.
Yeah,
but there are some, like, by the same token, there's some reporters out there that have reached out to us and said, we need some good stories. Yeah. We need, we're tired of reporting on this. And
not only that, I think a lot of people are tired of watching it. Enough.
Oh my
Let me just turn it off. Here's some good news. Okay, I'll show you some good news right now. All green. All right. I don't know if you can see that. I'm holding it up.
Oh, nice.
That is how the stock market wound up, and all the different stocks that I look at. A lot of green. I think the last week we were down to, maybe 2 weeks ago, I think the Dow was down to 18,000. We're back up to 23,700. So that's good.
There's some, exactly. Yeah. It's an indicator.
It is an indicator. But again, I think the speed at which, here's the thing, my experience, and I'm not sure what your experience with the recession. Do you remember the first recession you felt? How old were you?
Oh, goodness. It's funny. I feel very fortunate that we hadn't felt much of that.
I'm not much older than you are, so.
Yeah. No, but I have to say, it's funny. My husband and I looked at each other after 2008 and said, you know what, we're very fortunate because we didn't feel that much. Right. I think it's just, I don't know exactly why. I think it's probably got to be back when, probably when I was growing up with my parents. Right. And they're like, okay, we got to tighten up, folks.
I always tell the story. It was 90-91 for me. And I was about 14, 15 years old. And this is the pizza story. I'll tell it right now. My father was in the telecommunications business, doing business phone systems, built a tremendous business throughout the 80s, the roaring 80s. And, I didn't have a bad childhood whatsoever. We had toys and boats and RVs and stuff like that. He had to pull the business into the house from Elmsford, New York, where he was set up. Release all of his overhead. Literally happened, I think, in about a span of 2 weeks. He just made the decision to cut back and batten down the hatches to weather the storm. And that is what we did. I spent a majority of my formative high school years coming home from school to answer phones for the business, because they were actually literally integrated into our home. So I could sit and, at the kitchen table, the phone would ring. It was a business phone, and take phone calls and messages from my dad, who was out doing repair work or installations. And, here he is going on 50 years old, having to strap on a tool belt again and climb ladders and do the grunt work that, he hadn't done in 10 years. So that was my first taste of how brutal it could be. And I remember how long it took. And back when you're 15 years old, you might as well, a month feels like 6 months.
Right.
We don't realize how fast time speeds up as we get older. It's like, life is like a roll of toilet paper. It goes faster when you get to the end.
It does.
So we're supposed to be uplifting here, Jim. What are we doing?
Come on.
So
come on, bridge us back.
We had, there was a point where we were building out the office in our basement. It was a Saturday. I was helping my father, of all things, put in a light fixture. Oddly enough. And I said, hey, what do you want to do for lunch? Why don't we get a pizza? Back then you can get Domino's for $11 or, we're going to spend $20 for a lunch. And he said, well, no, we can't. I'm like, oh, all right. I remember specifically being on top of the ladder, working with my hands and kind of looking down at him. He was kind of looking up at me, and I said, well, why is that? He goes, we can't afford it. And that hit me. It's one of those moments that I remember to this day vividly. And it was like, oh, that's sobering. 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. And I was like, wow, this is real. This is pain, you know? So that, for me, I just remember it taking forever to getting back to a point. And that was right around the internet bubble started to happen. So 93, 94, 95 is when we really started, you know, accelerating out of that recession. And that is what I'm trying to get out there for people to understand, that it takes a collective mindset of a recession is just that. It's a receding of the flow of money, cash flow within the economy. So if everybody is fear-based and holds on, well, the media is telling me to be scared still. I'm not going to spend any money. I'm going to hold back. I'm not going to do anything risky. It's going to prolong this thing. So if you have the opportunity to go out and spend locally, spend with a restaurant, you know, a lot of restaurants are trying to figure out how to just weather the storm. You've got pickup, delivery, you know, curbside, all these things that are happening. We're getting hit up on text messages with different restaurants that are putting specials together. They're bundling for Easter dinner and stuff like that. You know, if we got the money, let's take advantage of it. A lot of people ran out to the supermarkets and stocked up on you know, groceries. Someone had said, look, if you got the money to eat out and you got the groceries in the freezer, go eat out. Feed the local economy. Yeah.
And with many of our clients in that restaurant space, it's been fascinating and really inspiring to see some of them really pivot on this. So you get to your point, you've got takeout, you've got delivery. I will tell you, anybody that is looking for a job, we've got, you know, any of the delivery services are hiring.
Kroger is hiring.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, and again, I think folks are really realizing, I know I do, because we really are respecting everything and we're not going out. And I look at those folks as, you know, they're an essential service right now. And they are kind of the unsung heroes, if you will, those folks that are delivering stuff and they're going into the grocery stores. But we have some restaurants that, to your point, are actually doing some things that called grocery essentials.
Right.
And actually, Del Frisco's, which is kind of fascinating. I just got off the phone. I think I was talking with the manager. I'm not sure. We were trying to figure out what to do for Easter, and we just ordered. And it's relatively, you know, reasonably priced. And honestly, you don't have to brave the grocery stores to get it. You just go. They put it together. They leave it for you. You pick it up, and you are good to go. But we've got a couple clients, you know, that are not as large of a name as, you know, Del Frisco's doing that. And it's just amazing what people will do when they need to survive. And that's one of the messages here is it's not time to crawl in a ball and you know, take a moment. You need to fight. And that's what some of the best businesses do in times of crisis. And that means getting out there, supporting, not selling, telling your message in the right way and letting people know that you're there for them. And I think that, you know, that's what's inspiring. And it also is to your point, it creates a little bit of a movement. And if we can get past the fear and say, it's going to be okay. You know, we have not seen something to this level, but we have the skill sets to deal with this.
We really do.
And that's we just have to remember that, because it's tough. It is tough. No doubt about it. I feel for every single business owner out there. We're all feeling it.
Yeah. And it's to varying degrees. What are some of the things that you are responding? Is it mainly that message of be them centric? The what I always kind of use. I mean, basically what you described before is the essence of hashtag be them centric. Always just being a servant, you know, getting into a servant role, no matter what you're in, servant to your employees, servant to your customers. You know, we're here for you. It's a lot of the things that I coach on for people when they make follow-up calls and sales. Always have something loaded that's of value to your client. So when they look down at their phone and they see your name coming up, they want to take the call. Exactly. You know, not just, hey, I'm just following up and touching base and blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. So what kind of tactics are you discovering out there in terms of even from the restaurant or other different businesses that you work with?
We're seeing people. We're again, and I think we've talked about this before. We really feel like very fortunate that we're in a situation where we select our clients based on how they fit with us. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our clients are extremely gracious, extremely community focused already, but they're still in this kind of swirl of things. They don't know where to focus, and so it's a matter of saying, okay, let us help you connect with the right entity, or excuse me, let us help you tell the story a little bit differently. An example would be, and then again, you're so busy you don't see that this is a story or something that would inspire someone. Right. We had a restaurant where a customer came through, and this was shortly after I think they went to drive-through only for a lot of restaurants, gave the cashier in the drive-through window $200 and said, please pay for as much as you can for the folks behind me. Wow. And that employee felt so motivated. And again, working with Katie, who's got that nose for news, said that is a story and somebody needs to hear that. Great story came out of it. And again, it's in the social engagement as a result was really great. We're saying, be mindful of the little things that you're doing for your employees. Even those things are good stories because, whether it's, and I think I would say, Jim, to your point, what are we doing differently? We're looking at what their pain points are. Mm-hmm. We're really listening. The biggest thing for them is a little bit of a sense of calm, a little bit of a voice of reason, and just saying, let us help you when you're busy, swirling with your 600 employees and your 10 different locations. Let us help you get grounded in what it is that you do best, serve food, and also, where your skill set is. And it may not be in drafting memos to your employees. And it may be creative about how you can communicate either tough messages or messages of inspiration. Let us help you get on a Zoom on a Zoom situation where we can video and you can send that out to your team and they can be inspired. It may be let us respond to some of the stuff that you're getting on social media. It may not be something that we technically are paid to do for them, but we're looking, just like they're looking at ways to pivot and serve their customers. We're doing the same thing. Needs aren't the same anymore. We don't need to place media ads or, that type of thing. We don't have events that we're doing for you all. But what you do need is clarity of thought, sometimes a thought partner, sometimes somebody to help you solve an issue. And sometimes it involves communication. Sometimes it just involves, how is this going to land with the people I need to communicate with? Right. I've got a tough message to share with them, or I've got hey, everyone is fine. And in fact, we're going to be feeding you and your families for free during this time. It's like, that's golden. We love helping with that way.
So what if you come across a story, for example, one of my clients who's working on something right now, and you and I can talk offline about this, but is that something, do they have to be a client, or if it's a good story, will you want to go out and get it and make sure that, it gets out to the marketplace?
So that's one of the things we are working on right now is we're offering up just an hour right now to start with on how to figure out what their good stories are, or it could be to that effect, your client that says, hey, I think this is a good story, but I'm not sure. And I don't even know how to approach it. Yes, we're happy to help. We're doing, an hour to see what that looks like. At this point, quite honestly, in particular where we do have capacity, we're looking to do some outreach. I just did something on, and I'm going to have to follow up again on Nashville Delivers. They're the local place that nobody really knows about. Locally here, live actually just 5 miles away. The reason I love their story is they are locally owned and operated, and they're serving, they're serving all of the community here, but some of the underserved areas where we don't, Nolensville, Smyrna, Brentwood, Franklin, and they're doing a lot of things to really help out. So, that's one of the things that we're doing. But yes, to your point, happy to help however we can, because media needs the stories, and we like to serve them up.
And you know what? It doesn't hurt for you, because it gets conversation started with potential clients when all this thing is all said and done that you've got now a relationship with.
Exactly.
And this is an organization. I think you'd like to work with them.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll tell you, that's what's interesting too. And I'm telling my team, I'm like, this is, we like to pick our clients. And many times I do that based on personal experiences I have. So Nashville Delivers, loved the story, talk to the owner. I'm like, I would love to work with them. It's probably not, this isn't the time right now, unless they have a really big pain point. But it could be something down the road.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's always that. And it goes back to that whole, what BNI says, givers gain. For us, it's, like pay it forward. And right now we're, our theme is we're happy to help and we're here to help. So anybody that certainly can send them our way.
You know what? Maybe that's the idea behind your podcast that you need to start.
What podcast is that?
Well, I mean,
we've been talking about for a year.
I mean, maybe it's just a highlight of things that are happening. And I'm looking up, who John Krasinski is?
Yes.
From The Office and Jack Ryan, A Quiet Place. He's been doing this thing, and of course I can't think of it now, but it's basically some good, SGN, that's what he's calling it, some good news. And he's dressed up like a news reporter, and he's got, I guess his kids made a placard that sits in back of him that has SGN on it, and it's all colored in with crayon and marker. And, he pulls good news pieces and puts it out there and, affects the world, that's now that we're kind of in the podcast talking about podcasts, and of course that's what I do. Maybe that's the idea, you pull the good, it doesn't have to be a client. It could be anybody that gets featured on your show.
And
Caroline Schmidt, because she's popping in. She says some good news. Exactly. I was searching for it.
I think and it's funny because I think my team put that in Slack. We are on the Slack channel constantly, and we do have a coronavirus thing, but we have all sorts of other channels within our Slack thing. And I think somebody posted something about John Krasinski.
Yeah. And he's doing great work. One of the things that I've been hearing from another tremendous influencer and business expert, very mindful and experienced man. His name is Matt Monero. He said, look, as a business owner or as anybody, you're going to have to get used to the fact that you're going to have to work probably twice, if not 3 times as hard, and make less money during this time. What do you think of that?
I would wholeheartedly agree. And I'd say, yep.
Ding, 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 ding.
Exactly. Spot on. And again, that's a choice I get to make. And that's the thing I always tell my team is, they're like, oh, Kim, this is really, you're taking a hit. I'm like, guess what, guys? That's the beauty of what I get to do. It's a choice I get to make. Yeah. I choose to invest in us as a team, and I choose to invest in myself because that's something I can control. And I'll shout out to my team. We've got 7 of us, and we've got a couple of freelancers as well. Best team, hands down, I've ever worked with. Yeah. And so yeah, it is. It's so in terms of working twice as hard. Yeah, it's and I think it is about investing and realizing it's okay. This is temporary. I always told my kids growing up, I've told my husband, I've told my family, I can do pretty much anything as long as I know it's temporary and it's moving me forward.
People will remember the things, the consolations that you took. And, one of the things that, I was glad that one of my clients kept me on because I thought for sure they were going to, take me off the roster. And because that's always just been my experience that whenever I would get hopeful, usually the opposite happens. So I kind of went to this thing that, I better get realistic about the fact that some of these things may drop off. Knock on wood, thank God none of them have. But I've made, look, I'm going to make some consolations and reduce my rate to accommodate you in this time and work with you because everybody's got to work together and be there for you. But, I still get paid for what I do. The podcast thing is interesting because I'm actually putting out a video today sharing what I believe is the best and least expensive way to start your own podcast. I think that's one of the most effective ways to start advertising or at least taking control of your marketing message in a time of crisis. Why not just use podcasting? Let's stop overthinking it. You don't have to have a room like this, which padded and all that other stuff. Because I use this padded room, not just for voiceover, but for banging my head against a wall.
I figured that.
But, and I literally set up my whole podcast studio in my kitchen just to show, look, you can do this inside in your kitchen. Here's how to do it. Here's what you get here. I've actually teamed up with a buddy of mine to do industry accommodating prices. So that video will be coming out shortly. Yes. Is there an ask at the end of it? Yeah. I can produce the podcast for you on the back end. And that's the pretty much the message. But you've been talking about podcasting for a while. What about it intrigues you? Is it similar to what I just described?
I think it is. I mean, and I think part of it is goes back to, my, where my passion is. And I love telling stories. I like telling good stories, things that inspire, things that make people think, things that make them behave differently. Because I am absolutely a visionary and I'm optimistic, for forever. So, that is something that I'm passionate about. I think the other thing is I am freakishly curious. I love hearing every time when each one of our 70 folks get up there, I'm fascinated by everybody's story. There's always a nugget during BNI that I go, that is absolutely fascinating. And I'll take it away. And there's so much out there that folks, whether it's a point of view or a great backstory that they have that people just don't know. That's, I think, probably what intrigues me the most. And, I am absolutely a card-carrying introvert. My team was blown away that I was actually going to even do this. I think they were a little worried. But I also did my first Instagram Live today, which is not me either. But
which is funny. Because I see you walk into BNI, and I know what you're talking about with people telling stories. You also get a lot of really bad jokes. I'm guilty of that as well. Dad jokes.
I don't know. I always get a little something out of those.
Of course. But, when I first met you, you're such a positive influence just on the surface that I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I think one of my giftings is being able to see the label of the bottle that you're in. Being able to see the outside of the bottle you're in. That's just something I've been able to do with a lot of business owners, their businesses, people in general. Just okay, what is your thing? And a lot of business owners have trouble describing what it is that they're about. They're big, they're one big thing. Your big thing that I've always noticed is that I've never seen you in a cross mood, in a, you're just having one of those days. If you are, you really hide it well. There's always an element of positivity. You're a beam of sunlight when you walk in a room. You've always got a smile on your face. So, I mean, you think you're introverted. I'm going, oh my gosh, you're well spoken. Well, you got a good voice. Be a host.
That's very thoughtful. No, and I guess I say that I'm a huge reader and a studier, and again, I love to listen probably more than I like to talk. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just all in how you get your energy. I'll go take a nap after this. Just kidding.
I get it.
I usually on BNI days, but it's quite honestly, I love it. I have to tell you, with the number of clients and the number of years, I have probably done over 1,500 different presentations. I've conducted probably 300 media trainings with executives down to managers. I love that part, but I have to I crash afterwards because it just takes a ton of energy. Yeah. But no, I so appreciate that. And I do think one of the things I like, when we look at ourselves, I think it is positivity. That's why, again, I think why you and I have connected on the podcast theme and idea, and definitely what you are doing. There's too much good out there, and that's not to take anything away from the hardships that folks are under, or the heartbreaking illnesses and deaths. But we have to keep fighting and motoring forward, and remembering that this too will pass, and it's not going to be painless, but it will pass.
I'm a huge fan of Marvel movies, as everyone knows, and there's a lot of wisdom and insight, believe it or not, in these movies that are based on comic book characters. One in particular that stands out is in the movie Doctor Strange, okay, where it's his origin story. He is someone who he's going through his journey and becoming who he is, and becoming the character of Doctor Strange and the Master Wizard, essentially. he's at one scene where he's standing on at a window on a balcony at a hospital, and with his teacher who, she's been able to see forward in time for so long, but she couldn't get past this one moment that she was now living in. And she says, now I know why. This is where my story ends. And this is, where she died. But she said something very poignant in it. She says, death is what gives life meaning. And I'm like, whoa, my gosh. These times are what give the good times meaning. Okay.
Exactly.
And when you have them, we have these ups and downs, and people complain about having the ups and downs. The downs are there for a reason. They're there for you to have more of a grounded faith in what you have faith in. Mine's in God and Christ. That look, when these things get stripped away from you that you've been idolizing, I'm the only one you've got to turn to. And I'm going to remind you of that every now and then. There are a lot of things that people can look out in the world and see. I mean, Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers. In all these different times of crisis, look for the helpers. There's always something good happening in your life, whether you know it or not. And it could be the smallest thing. It'd be, hey, I was able to get out of bed. That's a win, And
then, it's funny that you say that win, because it's one of those things. And again, we're all at some point in this, my husband and I are both working from home. He's taken point on his company's entire response to this, and like working 14-hour days. I'm, working through the business with the rest of the team, and it gets a little dark sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some things where you kind of go, this is not my best day. And we started, I had the opportunity to be on a call with 200 other small business owners across the country. Actually, it might have been internationally last week. And they brought something up that was awesome. And this group is called EOS Worldwide. And you've probably heard me talk about the book Traction.
Right.
Brilliant. They came up and they were so inspirational. And their one of their core values is help first. Right now, they're doing free sessions, free IDS sessions, and great stuff. And one of their nuggets for me was have wartime meetings. It's okay. And figure out what it's going to take for you to win the day. Mm-hmm. What is it going to, I can't look at my 1-year plan anymore. I can't even look 6 months or 3 months down the road. What does winning today look like? Mm-hmm. Once you do that, then you know what? Then you start to win a couple days consecutively, and pretty much you've won the week, and it feels good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're not going to have setbacks, but I think you're right. Like, look for those wins, and within your control, make them happen.
Yes.
So I'm there with you.
Brad Lee, one of my clients, who's also got a podcast called Dropping Bombs. He's got a great voice. He is, he put it very well. He's got a ton of value nuggets he puts out there into the interwebs. One of them was about that. He says, look, there are a lot of people that see the giant goal, and, they see other people seemingly make these giant goals on social media. That doesn't do very well for someone's psyche, because they're comparing themselves to somebody else. One of the things Vaynerchuk always talks about is like, you cannot compare yourself to somebody else. It's your story. It's your race to be run. Some of the notions that have been coming out lately from these entrepreneurs that have been, if you're not using this time to make yourself better, then you've obviously, time wasn't the problem, obviously, meaning that, when people say, I don't have time, you just don't have the drive or dedication. It's like, stop it, stop with this rhetoric, because there are people that have had the rug pulled out from underneath them. They're just trying to figure out what to do. And one of the things that Brad Lee said was, like what we're talking about, make it a goal to, make 5 phone calls that day, 5 value-based phone calls.
Right.
And make them achievable, because at the end of the day, you're going to feel good about it. I reached my goal.
Exactly.
Those little things can really add up and make a huge difference. Now, you mentioned naps before. I got to ask, are you a fan of power naps? You take power naps?
Oh, goodness, no.
No?
I nap to save my life.
Yeah, you take a nap to save your life?
No, I can't. My husband, on the other hand, can nap at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not my thing. Again, my energy really, it comes from a lot of reading. It comes from listening to other really smart people. and inspiring people like
so
yourself.
So you probably don't listen to this podcast, I guess.
No, Jim, I pay attention every time. And I also pay attention during BNI. You've always got something. But it's listening. It's the energy I get from other people who are really smart that give me different perspectives. Mm-hmm. But naps are not my thing. How about you?
Oh, I have to. I mean, every now and then, and it's one of those things where I think to myself, I've got a set of drums outside of this room that I haven't touched in a month. And I've been meaning to sit down and just play. But every time I sit down, I feel bad because I feel like I could be doing something productive. And that, to me, right now is not productive. It's not putting food on the table. And that's a bad thing. But yet, I know I could take 10 or 15 minutes and take a snooze and feel like $1 million afterwards. That I don't feel bad about. You know?
Exactly.
But, yeah, it's weird how we kind of gauge these little pleasures that we want to indulge in, just as long as we don't overindulge, you know? But pretty amazing.
No, you make a good point, because that's as a company, and you're always caring about your people and your business, and like, oh my gosh, how is so and so doing, and making sure. And I've got six other employees that are not near me, and they're in different cities, and so it was over a weekend when things are getting real. Like I've got to talk about a continuity plan here, and how do we keep ourselves healthy as people? How do we keep ourselves healthy as a business? And I started coming down with like, okay, you guys, you need to get up from your desk. You need to get away from your computer, because I have a lot of type A's on my team, and they're all wanting help. And again, and I'm not probably the worst offender, but I'm right there. So stepping away from your computer is actually healthy. Yeah. It has to happen. The power nap has to happen. Quite honestly, probably banging those drums has to happen.
I would agree.
For you to get, it's healthy. It's, mm-hmm. I mean, I got a bike, and my son put it together, but I haven't ridden it yet. It's, but I am taking walks with the husband.
Yeah.
And even though we can't go work out, we've got to find things to do. Long walks. I'm discovering like neighborhoods, over the course of an hour and a half walk that I didn't know were around. That's the fun stuff.
That's the reset button. And I guess if I could talk to the people who are listening that are going through where there isn't an emergency fund in place. Maybe you've gotten, handed your last paycheck. That was my story back in 2016. That happened to me. But at the same time, I was building up side hustles to kind of overlap and make it less of a sting when it actually did happen. I lost my job, and I was handed my last paycheck, and that was it. That's all we had. We maybe had a couple $100 in savings, if that. I had maybe a couple $100 on my business account, if that. And it was one of those things I had. My back was up against the wall. I committed to things in my mind that I just decided that were going to happen. One of the things we had on the docket was a trip to Disney World for the kids and the family. The first big trip we were going to take, and since they were born, I guess second one. But anyway, my wife on the way home, when I was talking to her, she says, "What about Disney World?" I said, "We're going." She said, "Well, how are we going to do that?" I said, "I don't know yet. I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to figure it out." To those who are listening, you have a skill set. If your back is up against a wall and you're forced to go on unemployment, it's not a solution long term. So use the time you have to do that thing you always wanted to do. If you look up Gary Vaynerchuk on YouTube, he talks about the flip challenge. Just use those words, the flip challenge. Put it into YouTube; it'll come right up. And he talks about literally just garage sailing on the weekends. Go with it, make it a family event. The garage sales are still happening. They're probably even better buys right now, where you can buy, maybe $20 worth of stuff and flip it for a lot more, depending on what it is. Especially if you have a passion for something. If you're into baseball cards, stuffed animals, anything like that, be resourceful. The country is still here and built in such a way to benefit your entrepreneurial spirit. So if you're listening to that, just start marinating your mind in that. What can I do to do something, right?
Absolutely.
And one of the things I'll kind of leave off with this, when I was in the car business, that's a rough business. That was basically one pipeline of income that I had to feed my family at that point. So when things weren't going very well, when I had a rough time and I literally went through a dry spell that was probably 2.5 weeks long that I didn't sell a thing. It was excruciating to go through. And my general manager, who was a good friend of mine at the time, I sat down and I was pulling what hair I had left out of my head. And he sat there and he listened. And he was a big, gregarious guy. He sounded like John Madden. And he goes, literally, so what the F you going to do about it? After me just emoting and pouring out and him just sitting there just listening to me, nodding his head. And he's like, so what? So you're going to sit here talking to me more about it? You're going to get back out there and do? He's like, dude, in times like this, go out, walk around the dealership a couple of times out in the parking lot, get yourself an ice cream cone, calm down and get back on the floor. I'm like, okay. It's as simple as that. It really is.
It is. If in doubt, do something.
Yeah.
Do something.
Activity. Mm-hmm. Find activity. Don't, and that's one thing that drives me nuts in this day and age. I know that we've got distractions and Tiger King and all sorts of stuff that are making distractions for people. That is not going to help your mindset. Mm-hmm. Don't sit on the couch and watch, an hour or so and 2 hours a day at night, hanging out with the family, winding down the day. That's one thing. But there are people that are binge watching stuff day after day. Don't do that. Don't do that.
It doesn't feel productive. It's not healthy overall, just for the psyche.
That show is accomplishing two things. It's distracting people and it's making them feel better about themselves.
I have to say, we watched our first episode last night because I couldn't understand what it was all about. And it was kind of fascinating. It is.
We watched it too. But we didn't, we watched it over a period of time. So, we didn't sit there and binge watch the show. But, I've been in this mode for several years. But anyway, how can I help you? What can people be looking out for to help Kim McKeeman and McKeeman Communications? If they come across a good news story, should they pass it along?
Absolutely pass it along.
Okay.
We would definitely want to hear it. And I would say, I think it's help other people. It help go out to, we can't go out to eat, but, help the local economy, help local business folks. Ultimately that's who, we're going to be working with. So, the sooner the businesses get, at least as long as they're able to survive and then get back on their feet, the better we're all going to be. But yes, good stories, send them our way. info@McKeemanPR.com.
Is that the best way to follow you? Where are you on the socials? Are you on the socials?
We are. Instagram is at McKeeman and McKeeman Communications for Facebook.
We need to make Kim McKeeman a household name. We need to turn you into an influencer, get you some speaking gigs.
Hey, one step at a time. These are baby steps for me, Joe. But I appreciate it. This has been great.
Podcast next. Got to do a podcast. The Kim McKeeman Show.
Yes, exactly.
Said just like that.
Oh, love it.
Kim
Sounds
McKeeman.
like the Gary Shandling Show.
What's that?
Sounded like the Gary Shandling Show.
This is the Kim McKeeman Show. The Kim McKeeman Show. This is the music that you hear as you watch the credits. Remember that show?
We loved it. Yeah, that was a fan favorite.
What was the show he had after that? He had another big show.
I can't.
Larry Sanders.
Oh yeah, Larry Sanders. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Wait, did he have the guy from Curb Your Enthusiasm in it?
Larry David?
Yeah, Larry David.
He might have been involved at some point. I'm not sure if he was just an actor on it or what, but yeah. The Gary Shandling Show was an HBO show, I think.
Oh yeah,
back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
We're dating ourselves right now.
I know.
Awesome. Thank you for being on. And I want to say thank you for those who are listening and watching. Of course, please subscribe, rate, and comment. Share with your friends if this is something of value. We want to keep putting it out. I'm going to try and keep on putting it out as best as I can and make it more of a weekly podcast rather than a bi-weekly-ish podcast. Kim, thank you so much for being on with me. And check us out, jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. And that's where you'll be able to follow all of us and all the different things that you should follow. Thanks for listening. This
is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com /podcast.